In May 2025, Donald Trump took to Truth Social to call Leonard Leo a sleazebag who gave him bad advice. For a moment, the phantom behind the decades of conservative legal victories had a spotlight thrown on him. Most Americans still don't know his name, but they should. Introducing Leonard Leo. Leo is the architect of judicial coup decades in the making. Presidents sign the nominations, senators cast the votes, but Leo built the machine that seats them. Leonard Leo was born in 1965 on Long Island, raised in suburban New Jersey in a deeply Catholic Italian household. His father died when he was just a toddler, and that early loss left a mark on Leo. He developed a worldview that saw hierarchy and divine law as natural truths. And from early on, he gravitated towards other conservative Catholics, where his identity as a believer would shape his every ambition. At Cornell, he found his calling, molding American law to reflect constitutional originalism. Originalism means the Constitution should be interpreted based on how it was understood by the people that wrote it, rather than how it might be interpreted in today's modern context, which is kind of weird. Anyways, Leo founded a Federalist Society chapter at Cornell where he turned originalism into a moral crusade. Leo built his power by becoming the ultimate gatekeeper. In Washington, Leo became the quiet kingmaker of conservative legal movement. He brokered judicial nominations for George W. Bush and Donald Trump, and leveraged relationships with wealthy donors to show a shadow empire of nonprofits, shell groups, and political committees. These networks funneled billions into reshaping the courts with Leo as their architect. Unlike other power players, Leo never chased fame or public persona. Instead, he cultivated influence through secrecy. By 2021, he secured control over the Marble Freedom Trust, a $1.6 billion war chest, reportedly the largest single political donation in U.S. history. With that funding, he became not just a legal strategist, but a billionaire power broker in his own right. Ideological goals and agenda. We kind of already know this because we talked about the originalism, but that's the biggest piece behind it. Leo envisions a nation governed by originalist interpretation of the Constitution, one that rolls back civil rights, environmental oversight, and federal safeguards. He really wants a theocratic judiciary grounded in religious values, dismantling of regulatory agencies like the EPA and FTC, legal immunity for corporations and religious institutions, expansion of gun rights and voter suppression laws, erasure of separation between church and state. All of these are very problematic. By 2021, Leonard Leo secured control over the Marble Freedom Trust, a $1.6 billion political war chest, the largest known single donation in U.S. history. This massive fund, combined with affiliates like the 85 Fund, Concord Fund, CRC Advisors, forms a closed-loop infrastructure of nonprofit grants flowing into Leo-controlled organizations, which then contract his own consulting firm to execute strategy, legal work, and media campaigns. It's money laundering. This isn't traditional lobbying, it's foundational building. Money flows invisibly into court cases, think tanks, and candidate support, and now culture shaping with this whole Hollywood and media push. Leo's network has influenced over 200 federal judicial appointments, including 3 current Supreme Court justices. He builds judicial pipelines through the Federalist Society by recruiting law clerks, mentoring them, positions them for eventual judicial roles. Entities like the Judicial Crisis Network and Concord Fund spend heavily on ads, media blitzes, and orchestration to secure appointments. Shadow networks. Leo coordinates, I won't say launder for legal reasons, but the flow of money through a labyrinth of legal advocacy groups, PR firms, think tanks, and ad campaigns, all designed to add to this war chest and fund right-wing policy while obscuring its origin. At the center of this network is his firm CRC Advisors, and since 2023, they've received more than $33 million from organizations like Concord Fund, all under the catch-all label of consulting services. Then Concord Fund sent $6 million to CRC Advisors for consulting services. This circular model of funding relies on nonprofit dollars to enrich Leo's own company while financing the broader conservative agenda. By dispersing money through these multiple layers of entities, Leo's operation can claim plausible deniability, masking the true sources of funding while producing outsized influence on law, policy, and culture. Cultural warfare. Leo is now investing at least $1 billion that we know into entertainment, media, and storytelling platforms via the Marble Freedom Trust and neo networks to shape public perception and normalize conservative values, particularly around religion, family, and opposition to progressive movements like DEI and ESG. This strategy frames policy outcomes as downstream from media culture. Leo builds the content infrastructure so that legal and ideological dominance feels inevitable. Project 2025. Leo and his ecosystem deeply influence Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, advancing proposals to restructure executive branch power, dismantle regulatory authorities, and install a legal framework aligned with religious conservatism and limited government. Conservatism. Which is such a fucking joke. Anyways, They're all of like small government, go to the states. And then it's like executive order after executive order. Fuck off. Sorry. Clerks, judges, and legal scholars from Leo's mentoring network feed into Project 2025 staffing, meaning policy proposals, legal theory, and personnel come from a unified ideological pipeline. Leo's power isn't about holding office, it's about infrastructure. He built a dark money empire that bankrolls courts, media, and political strategy while his own firms manage it. His judges change the law, his legal cases dismantle policy, his media investments seed narratives, and his ideological pipeline feeds future architecture. Current influence and ongoing threats. Leo is now working closely with Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, aiming to reshape the federal government around executive power. He is building a pipeline of ultra-conservative clerks, judges, and legal theorists who are ready to carry out sweeping changes to civil liberties and federal structure. With his war chest still largely intact, his influence is just getting started. But Leo's grip on power is not without friction. In 2025, he experienced a notable falling out with Donald Trump, who sidelined Leo in favor of more loyalty-driven operatives. While Leo was instrumental in shaping Trump's first-term judicial legacy, he's no longer in the president's inner circle. Pushed out to clashing egos, diverging agendas, who fucking knows? Still, Leo's influence extends far beyond any one administration, and his dark money empire continues to shape the court's culture wars from behind the scenes. Leonard Leo's influence now extends into culture itself. In 2023, reports confirmed that Leo is backing a $1 billion investment to reshape Hollywood, funding films, television, and streaming content that reflect conservative values and push back against diversity, LGBTQ+ visibility, and progressive narratives. This isn't about entertainment, it's about engineering a parallel media ecosystem where right-wing ideals feel normal, inevitable, and apolitical. Think faith-based Top Gun, but with a constitutional agenda. And honestly, by the way, all of these reality shows of like the Bible, religious-y, cute girls, we really need to start asking who is funding some of this content. Trad wives, secret lives of anybody, not secret lives of anyone. Leo understands that policy is downstream from culture, and he's building that pipeline in reverse, weaponizing story to manipulate public sentiment, especially among young people, suburban families, and religious communities. Entities and policies to watch for. Marble Freedom Trust, that's the biggest one. Judges and clerks tied to the Federalist Society. Project 2025 judicial reform proposals. Supreme Court decisions weakening agency power or expanding religious exemptions. Look at all of the executive orders that have gone to the Supreme Court. Look at those justices that are approving those. Here's what you can do. Support court reform and judicial ethics legislation. Demand transparency and dark money judicial influence. Because of Citizens United, there is no transparency right now. So right now, legally, they don't have to tell us who is funding from 50c6 organizations. That's why all of these groups exist, is because they can use these organizations to hide who their true backers are. So demand transparency, overturn Citizens United. Track Leo-tied organizations and rulings using sources like accountable.us and ProPublica. Share this profile to expose the architect behind the Supreme Court's hard right turn. If this helped you connect the dots, join the rebellion. Your clicks aren't just clicks. Your engagement, your likes, your comments, shares fight the algorithm that protects the overlords. Subscribe for weekly drops.